Okay, first of all, we have the member share sign-in sheet. So if you brought these are a few of my favorite things and have not signed in, I'd appreciate you guys signing in. Is there anybody? Okay, we're moving along. Just a couple of things, and I wanted to take care of it first. You'll see on your table that you've got a big art tour map and the artists, and also a card. I'll talk about it later, but that's what that is for, and you are welcome to have those, okay? You're welcome to take them.
And I have more up on the front table if there aren't enough for them on the tables.
Okay, and they're in the parking lot, but we'll go into more detail on that. There's also a flyer for Art Barn tour, and I can go into more detail about that, and Linnell will probably usurp, is that the word, usurp me? Yeah, you can do that. Okay, all right, so getting along here, I got some notes. It gives me great pleasure, truly, to introduce Adrienne Belair. She is quite the artist. I recommend every one of you to go onto her website. The website is in the newsletter, and you just click on it and you see all the fabulous art she does, primarily mugs. The mugs are outstanding, and I really like them. Adrienne is originally from Napa, and in 2017 she got her degree in printmaking. Whatever that is, but she got it. And then she's taken a ceramics class in South Lake Tahoe, which is, of course, near and dear to my heart, and that's where she has blossomed into throwing on the wheel, as well as getting into sculpting, which is exciting. So today, she's going to teach us how to make paper, and that's going to be pretty good. So with that, it gives me great pleasure. Adrienne, take over.
Hi, everybody.
Let's do a mic switch and a little bit of a camera change.
Let's see. Try it.
Can you hear me? Sounds good. Oh, perfect. Yeah, sounds like it is. I'm Adrienne. Thank you so much, Kathy, for that introduction. I'm really happy to be with you here today. Like Kathy said, I got a degree in printmaking from Syracuse University, all the way over on the East Coast. And with printmaking, you learn how to do screen printing, wood block prints, lithography, but a lot of really interesting ways of basically like copying images over and over and over again. And one of the classes I was able to take that was actually a requirement for my degree was paper making. So I went into that class kind of being like, I don't really need to learn how to make paper. I can buy that at any art store, and came out of it just so in love with the medium. And it's just this really wonderful thing because we get to take something that we see as a material and make it into its own piece of art. It's very approachable, and we can really do it at home with things that we can buy from the grocery store or the hardware store. And so I'm really excited to show you guys how to do that. Thought I'd give you a little history about paper making. It originated in Japan. I can't remember the year, but centuries and centuries and centuries ago. They originally make it with mulberry paper. Eventually it made, or mulberry bark, excuse me. Eventually it made its way over to Europe, where they adopted some techniques and then kind of started making it with cotton. So a little interesting fact is when they were first making paper in Europe, they were collecting rags from everyone, putting them in piles and letting them basically like ferment and decompose, taking those fibers, breaking them down, and then turning that into paper. So it's a lot of the reason why all the old books are gray colored paper. It's because it came from dirty rags. And then of course we've modernized it. Now we use wood, and do a lot of other things, but it's really interesting that there's still the separation between Eastern paper making and Western paper making. I'm going to show you how to do the Western style, but I highly recommend looking into Eastern paper making. They make really beautiful, very thin and strong paper. I have a bit of an example here. I'll pass this around. This is made out of, like I said, mulberry paper. It's called Kozo. And you'll be able to see the difference between this piece of paper and then the other pieces of paper that I have today. Especially when you look in the light, you'll be able to see some of the individual fibers really intertwining. So go ahead and pass that around for you. You can check it out. Sandwiched in between those pieces of paper is the fiber that's actually the mulberry bark that was broken down to create that piece of paper, so you can kind of see where it started and how it finished. Yeah, it's really fun. So for paper making, it's honestly pretty simple. It can seem like a lot at first, but you really only need a few things. First off, you need your mold and decal. This is my old, used and abused mold and decal. I did not decide to show you how to make that today just for a limit of time, but I'll kind of go over the basics on how to make your own. This is the one, my brand new one that I'll be using with you today. You're also going to need a bit of water. You're going to need some Pellons, which you can get at Joann Fabrics. I also like using a piece of wool that I also get at Joann Fabrics, but that's optional. I like to use a couple plastic cutting boards. And then we'll need our pulping material and a blender and some buckets, and that's kind of it. So I'll go through and show you where all these pieces come into play with the paper making process. But first I'll start with a mold and decal. So this is our mold and this is our decal. They work together to create a sheet of paper. I've used just canvas frames for this one. For this one I used recycled picture frames, and so it's really easy to source these materials from either an art store or a thrift store. After that, I take this larger mesh and this finer mesh pieces of mesh that I get at the hardware store, and then you're gonna layer them together and just staple them onto your canvas. It's very simple, like you would stretch a canvas over a frame. Then I duct tape around that just to help secure it. For the decal, it's just some window foam tape. Again, at the hardware store, you add it onto your little frame, and then you're done with your mold and decal. You can also buy them pre-made, but they're very expensive to buy pre-made, and they're really easy to make at home. So I always opt for making your own. You also have control over the size, which is really cool when you do that. So we're gonna move on to pulp now. The really cool thing about paper is that you can use anything. You can use pre-existing paper, recycled materials. You can also use something called linters. So these are linters. I really love using them. I source these from Carriage House Paper, which is going to be a website. They're out of Brooklyn, but they're very accessible. Really great customer service. The difference between linters and recycled paper is these are basically pre-pulped materials that would be hard for you to pulp on your own. They've been dried and then basically reconstituted into large sheets of paper, and all you have to do to use them is blend them up in an at-home blender, which is also how I make my regular pulp from recycled paper. So I'm not going to blend here today because I want to spare you the noise, but I basically just stick a little handful of some wet paper that I've shredded up, put it in the blender with some water about to here, blend it for about 30 seconds, and then you have some pulp and you're ready to go. It's super simple to make, and again, you can use any material that you have sitting around the house. I use a lot of my packing material. But then back to the linters. The cool thing about these is you can play around with some really interesting materials. So this linter right here is Abaca, which is banana leaf. This is my favorite to use personally. It adds a wonderful strength to your paper. You can also use cotton, which I have here. This is flax. This is hemp, and you can use flax, bamboo. So I really encourage you, if you get into paper making, to go onto Carriage House and see what materials you can play around with. A really fun linter that you can buy is reclaimed denim jeans. So it's like this shredded denim, and you get this beautiful blue paper out of it. So the possibilities for materials are really endless, and we're used to making them with regular paper, but you can also get into different plants. Hosta, if you're familiar with that, is a great plant material to make paper with, so it really is like a very infinite medium. So, I also want to say that I adapted my method of making paper from what I learned in school. We were blessed with some like really wonderful materials and machines that I and really none of us are going to have in our house, so I've kind of taken what I learned there and brought it into something that I could do in my own home. That being said, I'm still creating on a pretty mass scale. I tend to make a couple hundred pieces of paper every time I do this, so if you're only making 1 or 2 pieces, there might be some other methods that are going to like work better for you and what you need and what the space you have in your home, but I think this is a really good starting point, and there's so many option, like so much information online where you can take this and kind of, again, what I did, readapt to fit your space. The thing that has helped me most in translating this to an indoor space, since it is a very soggy experience, is this piece of, it's a baking tray. My mom actually made this for me, so all she did was take a baking tray, drill a little hole in it, and then put this tube on there. I drain that tube into a bucket. This helps contain all my water mess and also allows me to reuse all the water that is running off the paper as I'm making it. So it's really simple, and it's really made like the biggest difference in being able to bring this activity indoor, especially in the winter in Tahoe, versus feeling like I have to do it outside where I'm making a mess and water's going everywhere. So this has been huge. If you're gonna take some time to add like any extra tool into this toolkit, I really highly recommend that. So to get started, this is what we call our couching station. This is where we set our pieces of paper down after we pulled them from our vat. I like to start with a cutting board, which I will use later in the process to help press the paper together. So I set that down at the bottom. I like to put my wool over that. Everything I'm putting on between the wool and the Pellon, this is going to be damp. You want this wet. The wool's only job really is to help add a little extra cushion, so as I'm getting started putting these pieces of paper down, they come off the decal more easily. So it's not necessary, but I do find it helpful. And I put a Pellon down to start, so just one. Mine are really gross and dirty.
You're calling that a Pellon?
A Pellon, yes. It's a piece of fabric that they use a lot, like as backing for embroidery. You can find it at Joann Fabrics. It's kind of like I don't really know how to describe it, but
it's a stabilizer.
Yeah, exactly. So I get these at Joann Fabrics. You can either get a whole bolt and cut it up if you want a lot, or just ask them for a little bit. But these have been used and abused, and they last a really long time. So it's easy to start with that. You want to start with a vat. I like to just use like a nice Tupperware, like a big Tupperware container. If I'm doing a lot, I'll use a plastic utility sink, but that was too much to bring today, so we're doing a small version. And all we need to do is add our pulp to this, and then we can start pulling our sheets of paper. So I've pre-blended all my pulp for you here today. Today I'm using Abaca, and I will, if anyone wants to like check it out, it's basically, it looks like kind of like wet wool when you're using it.
Show the camera. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's very like, this is a very like sensory activity, lots of things to play with.
Like tapioca.
Exactly, and I also brought some recycled paper pulp that is hanging out back here, but we'll just add that in later if we need it. I like to just grab a couple handfuls and throw them in my vat. And the one thing I'd like to say about what you're adding to the vat, it's really hard to take things out of it. So be very mindful about how much you're putting in, what you're putting in, and I'll get that to a little bit more when I start talking about color and inclusions and dispersions. But I like to start with just a couple handfuls. And when you mix all the pulp up in the vat, you'll see it disperse really nicely. This is called hogging the vat. There's a lot of fun paper making terms that are just almost silly. And if you want to learn more about them and just in general history of paper making, there's a really wonderful book called Paper Making: The History and Technique of Something Craft. It's by Hunter Durr, and he's very in-depth on all the history. It is a really interesting book. Again, we're taking our mold and decal. We want this mesh part to be our bottom, and then we want it to meet with a nice squishy windowsill part, so we have a little sandwich. I like to get these a little wet before I start. It just seems to help. And then all we're doing after we've moved it around is we're doing a motion where we're going down, some scooping up. So I'll do it kind of from this side. It's like a scoop motion, and then we do a little shake, shake, shake to get the water out. So we're gonna go down, pull up, a little shake, shake, shake. Once you've seen the water drained out, which hopefully the camera can see, we're gonna remove our decal, and we're left with a nice little sheet of paper on top. It's so simple, it's almost like, it's crazy. We're moving over to our couching station. This part, you wanna flip it over. We're gonna push down. For the first couple, I like to press down on the middle a little to help get them off. And then from the opposite side, you're gonna pull away. And then you have a sheet of paper. And it's very approachable, it's very fun, it's very easy. Next, we're gonna take another Pellon and just sandwich that. And then you just kind of continue on. So it goes really fast, you can make a lot at once. Every couple sheets you're gonna want to add more pulp to the vat. And if you want to be really consistent with your pieces of paper, I would add more pulp every single time, but I'm pretty inconsistent when it comes to making the sheets of paper. I really like to see how they form themselves, how they change between being thinner, being thicker. That whole part of them evolving on their own is really fun for me. So again, just pop it off and you have a sheet of paper. There's so much you can do after you start making them. So we can change the color of them, we can add things into them. So I'll kind of go over some of that. I personally really love to use natural materials to change the color. I really like activated charcoal. It gives a really wonderful dark gray color, kind of like a nice blue, and I'll pass some of these sheets around. So that color is made by charcoal being added into the vat. I also really like to use spirulina, which gives us light gray. Yes?
When do you add the element to change the color? When do you do that?
So I'll show you in just a second. You literally just add the powder into the vat with the fibers.
Oh, so
And-
it's before you make the paper?
Yeah, it's before I make the paper. I add it in after, so then I can make one large base and then change that base as I go along. This nice green color was made from spirulina powder. You can buy that. All of these ingredients you can usually buy at health stores. And then
Looks like onion on the hard side.
this nice yellow color. Let me get a better one. This nice yellow color was made by adding turmeric into the paper. And you can sometimes kind of smell those elements, which can be a really fun thing to do. I've done large installations with paper, and as you walk up to them, you can kind of smell the earthiness of the paper, which, you know, it can be a cool extra like sense added to your art piece. Another way to change the color of the paper is adding this crinkle packaging that you can get at like craft stores. Like Michael's, I think, sells it to your pulp while you're blending it up. This particular crinkle stuff I got at Dollar Tree, and I would not recommend this brand. It seems like they've printed the color on top of the paper versus it being fully saturated, but I find if you're getting a little bit higher end, fully saturated, you can really choose the color of paper you want, which is it's a really simple way to really manipulate the colors. And they kind of blend like you paint would. So if I want a nice like chartreuse color, I'll add the turmeric and the spirulina together. And it'll create like a really beautiful, like that like bright yellow green color. Again, something to keep in mind is as soon as something's added to the vat, you cannot take it out unless you fully remove everything from the vat. So I really like to think of how things are going to gradiate together. I tend to start with a lighter color and then work my way up. Charcoal is usually the last thing I add. And then you get to really build, like again, like you get to see these gradients move through the paper as you're continuing to pull these sheets, which is really interesting.
If you were going to put the crinkle paper in, would you grind that up in your blender first?
Yes, I would grind that up in the blender. I usually keep it separate, so again, I have a little bit more control of adding it when I want to and the amount I want to. I can add a little, see how I feel about that color, and if I want it more saturated, I'll add a little bit more. But I'm gonna add the charcoal to this in just a second so you can see how that color changes. I always like to start with just pulling a couple plain white sheets of paper, so then I have some nice plain white sheets of paper before I start making a mess of the vat, because it really is, once it's in there, you're kind of stuck with it. So I just brought this.
Adrian, why do you have to keep them so wet all the time?
So it helps so it doesn't, the paper won't, if it's wet on dry, the paper will dry a little weird and it will be harder to remove the paper later. Once it's all pressed and we start taking them off the pellons being wet evenly really is helpful.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so the leaves and the flowers
Yes.
on the paper, you
Yes.
can tell us about that later.
Yeah, that's coming right after the coloring it, yeah. So again, this is just some charcoal powder. I'm just gonna add a little bit so it's not too dark. And we'll see how the color changes almost immediately. Just a reminder too, everything when you're making is obviously wet, so when it dries, it will dry a lot lighter than it will look as you're pulling it. So you get to kind of see how it changes throughout the process, which is very exciting. Another fun thing to do is change the amount you are blending your pulp. And you will see that even in this piece, I didn't hog the vat very well, so there's some chunks, so you'll see some little white pieces in here, and it can really have like some fun texture added to things with that. But you can see how just adding that little bit of charcoal in has completely changed the color of the paper now. So now, before we get into adding things, I'm going to talk about inclusions. This is not quite what you're seeing with those little leaves and flowers in the paper, but it is what you saw with that piece of Eastern style paper that was passed around. Inclusions are basically sandwiching something between two sheets of paper. So it's a great way to add things to your paper without having to add it to your vat and keep your paper free and clear of things. So all you're going to do is you coot your single sheet of paper. And I just also want to mention, you want to be putting your paper over top of each other as evenly as possible. I'd say like don't put one over here and one over here. You really want them stacked as nicely as you can. I brought in some flower petals that I've saved from some bouquets, and all you have to do is put your little pieces that you want to include on top of that fresh piece of paper. You can arrange them however you want. And you'll take another piece of paper . Yeah, and
So
you
no
just,
pellon between.
no pellon between these two, and then just as closely as you can over top. And you can sandwich in between, and especially if you're using like nice certain papers and keeping them thin, you'll get a beautiful translucency showing through, and it almost can look like stained glass when it's held up to a window. It's really cool. It's fun to sandwiching like your drawings that you've done in between those papers. Like you can really get so creative with what you're putting in there. Even sandwiching, like if you want like a two-tone paper, you can sandwich a little bit of another piece, like pull one piece of color and then put another like have one little vat of like say blue and then another little vat of pink and put them on top. So one side is pink, one side is blue. Like it's very like, paper really lends itself to doing whatever you want. It's pretty exciting. So the next thing I want to talk about is dispersion. This is when you're adding things to the vat that aren't necessarily paper. My favorite things to add are lavender, like dried lavender seeds, or like little buds, I guess. Rose buds, tea. I like a lot of like adding lots of tea things, like herbs, things like that. One, it makes the paper smell really good. Two, they just like look really pretty. And they're just very accessible to get. You can, again, go to like your health food store and get them in bulk so you can get as much as you want. Tea is really fun because if you're using it with just white paper, the tannins will kind of leach out while it's wet, and then you'll get these like beautiful little spots of like brown. Let me see if I have any that I can show you. I don't have any of the brown, but you can see I added some petals in, and the petals leached purple, so I'll pass that around for you to see.
That was in between.
So this is just gonna go right in the vat, yeah. So this is called dispersion. Again, I like to say this so many times, once things are in, you can't take them out. So it's really important that you do this when you're ready to do this. When I feel like there's a point in the paper making process for me where I'm like ready to make it dirty, so that's when I start adding in the dispersions. And over time, as you pull the paper, they'll slowly weed themselves out and you can add other things in, but there'll always probably be like a couple pieces left over no matter what. I just put this right in the vat, super simple. Hog the vat around.
Adrian,
Yes.
I'm sorry, what did you just put in there?
I put lavender, little lavender pieces in there.
Seeds?
And so they're like the little dried lavender petals
Oh,
kind of thing. You can put seeds. I actually have made some business cards for a friend with wildflower seeds in them, so people can take them and plant them afterwards. I will say if you are going to add seeds, make sure that you are drying your paper immediately. If you let it sit wet, the seeds will sprout and germinate in the paper. It's happened before, which is really fun. That's another cool thing you can do. But if that's not your intention, just be aware of that. So yeah, I just add in my little seeds, pull another piece of paper. I would like to say too, it's good to make sure you're adding in something that is fairly squishable. Anything that's like really hard is just going to have an impact on your paper when it's time to press out all the water. So anything that can kind of like flatten out a little bit is always a better choice. You don't want anything that's gonna like be super super rigid and like poke a hole through all your beautiful work. Down. You can kind of see, hopefully, these little pieces sticking through. I'll add in some flower petals so you can see the difference.
That's nice.
And again, like the lavender adds like a really nice smell to things, so later on your paper will smell really good. And here I'm adding in those dried leaves again. Something I really love about the dispersion technique is you can't really control how these pieces are going to form within your paper, so you get a nice surprise. So you can see that little plant. That plant you'll see is sticking up a little now. Once we press everything down, it will really like flatten itself out, and it will the fibers will kind of work its way around it and help it stick in there. But you can see even as I've started pulling this paper how, and adding more pulp to the vat, how that charcoal has already kind of faded a little bit. So you can really have a lot of fun playing with that gradient. Okay, so normally I would make hundreds of pieces of paper, but I'm not going to keep you here for that. Once you're done, once you've made all the paper that you want to make, got it all good, you're going to want to press your paper out. I like to press it with C-clamps. These guys dries right here. Normally I would use 4. I sandwich this between these 2 cutting boards, and then I will put all 4 of these around in the corners and slowly tighten them down until I feel like I cannot tighten them anymore. We're not making a lot of paper today, and I'm going to save you the time of me struggling with that because it can be a little finicky to get them all sandwiched down perfectly. But it is really important that you're pressing your paper out. And again, that's why this little tray comes in handy, is when you have a lot of paper, a lot of water comes out. So I really like to make sure, just move it around, get as much as you can.
Yeah, I can see the water.
Yeah, and this is really helpful for getting the fibers all squished together. Again, if it's just a couple pieces, some hands are fine, but if you're doing a lot, the clamps really come in handy. When we were in college, we had a hydraulic press, so I didn't have to do any work, and it was so nice. And now this is the most labor-intensive part of the paper making. You got it all squished out. And you'll see it flatten, you'll see the water kind of come out. And then you're going to want to let it sit out to dry. So you want to find a flat surface. These pieces of corrugated plastic that I've gotten from Home Depot have been so helpful for me. They're super easy to sort, they're consistently flat surface, they're easy for me to like lay out all over the yard while it dries, but you can use pretty much anything. We could, if we wanted to, stick them on these cabinets. I stick them on windows sometimes, which is really pretty too, to watch them dry on the windows. But you do want to keep in mind that whatever surface you're sticking your paper to dry, it will grab that texture. So like for example, I have cinder blocks on the side of my house. If I stick them onto that, I get a very like ripply texture on the paper once it's all dry. But the drying part is really simple. Let me move a couple things around. All you're gonna do is you're gonna take your Pellons, you'll peel off that top, and by one, you're gonna take them off. You literally just lay it flat onto your surface, give it a nice little pat, and then I like to slowly peel the corner back. I always help that first corner stick down, and then you very slowly pull back, and you have your piece of paper. You just need to let it dry for a couple hours to a day, depending on the climate you're in. Like if during the summer in Tahoe, a few hours is fine outside. In the winter, it takes a little bit longer. But then you're ready to use your paper, and it's just such like a wonderful, approachable medium. It's such a wonderful way to like elevate your art and like really personalize it. And it's just so simple, and you can do it at home. And I really, I'm just like very in love with the whole practice. It's very meditative. You get to like, you know, there's something, it feels very playful. It feels very like something that you would do as a kid almost. And yes.
I noticed as you took the second piece of paper off, it looked like it kind of fell apart.
Yeah, it
and you
did.
just mushed it back
Exactly.
together.
Yeah, that's all you gotta do. You'll see these Pellons are pretty old, so and not clean. I'm not very good at taking care of the Pellons themselves, so they will have some fibers that we'll want to grab on. Brand new ones don't seem to have that problem. But yeah, you'll see like right here it lifted a little. I just smush it down, and then it's good to go. Cool. Yeah, and it's totally fine. You can even, when it's wet, if you wanted to try to smush the, like if I wanted to lie these two pieces together, I could match them up and overlap them a little. And if I really go in there and smush them together, they will most likely stay together once they're dry. The fibers really like each other and really want to hang out. Yeah. Any more questions? I know that was a lot in a short amount of time. What was it?
Well, it's probably the eastern thing?
Yes.
Rice paper?
Yes.
Can you add some cooked rice into your vat with the paper?
So it's actually a misconception. Rice paper is not made out of rice.
Oh.
That is like an old, just a term that got connected to it. But I have added rice to my paper before, just for fun, for a texture element. I'd probably go with uncooked rice versus cooked, just because the cooked will smush down once it's all being like smushed together. But you can totally do that.
So is the rice not one of those things that's so hard it's gonna poke a hole?
It's right on that borderline. I'd say, like, be prepared for some of the surrounding papers to grab that texture, but it's not, as long as you have a bunch and it kind of feels more evenly distributed, it should be okay.
One more question.
Yes.
I know that.
Yeah.
I know you like to use natural materials to color, but, can you use something as simple as food coloring?
I've tried food coloring before, and it's really dependent on the fiber that you're using. Like if you've dyed fabric before, like RIT dye, for example, it works better on certain fibers than others. So if you're using cotton that's really susceptible to dye, it might work well. I haven't had much luck with it in the past, but I also wasn't using any I was using a lot more recycled paper. And recycled paper has something, or paper in general that we use on a daily basis, has something called sizing in it. If you're familiar with like watercolor paper, watercolor has a lot of sizing in it to help keep that water from absorbing correctly in the paper. And so I find that anything with a lot of sizing does kind of repel a lot of dyes. If you're using Abaca, any of those linters, there's no sizing in there. So that's also something to think about. If you are set on using this paper to watercolor on, research some sizing, and all it is you can usually buy like a little bottle of it and you just add it to your vat and you're good to go, or you can paint it on top.
I was just wondering, sitting here listening to you, and you call that a linter. What if you just took a lint out of like your dry?
You can, yeah. My friend has done that actually. So you can absolutely take lint. Like, there's so many materials you can.
That would be fun.
Yeah, it's really fun. Oh, sorry, you were first, and then we'll get to you.
I have some paper that it's almost translucent.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something, a special starter? Is that a different technique?
So
or?
it's probably an Eastern style technique.
Okay.
A big difference between Eastern and Western style is the way the fibers are processed. So for Eastern style, they take the inside of generally mulberry bark, and then how I was taught to do it is you take that bark, you boil it with some soda ash to help get the fibers broken down, and then you literally take wooden mallets and hit that fiber until they've all become individual fibers. So anything that you see those long fibers has probably been processed in a similar way rather than a blender, which would just really cut them up small. But those long fibers really make for that strong piece of paper because of the way that they connect together. And Eastern style pulls, when you pull paper from a vat during Eastern style, you're doing it very differently. You're taking it, you're pulling it, and then you're very slowly rocking it back and forth. And then to create a single layer, you dip it again, and then slowly rock it back and forth the opposite way. So you're building up these layers of these fibers intertwining really strongly, and it allows it to be translucent but have the strength to hold itself. Yeah. Oh, sorry, hold on. I think we're getting I don't want to forget you.
Onion skin, for instance.
Yes.
Do you use that same process, or would it break up easily and then twine together again?
I'm not sure about using onion skin as the only base. There's a lot of really great books that go into making paper out of like specifically plant materials, but you could absolutely add it to one of these bases and it would act similarly to that paper going around with the little leaves where you'd get little peek glimpses of it within your paper. And it might dye it a little bit too, because I know onion skin is used as a dye sometimes. So that could be interesting.
I have one more question for you.
Yes.
Your practical use of this paper that you make, when you make so much.
Yes.
You don't use it for, you use it just as an individual art object as itself, or a background, like a map?
So it's a little bit of both. I have some examples of frame pieces here. I do a lot of collaging with it personally, where I take it, I like to hand sew it together. And that's either on a small scale or a large. Like I just had a canvas that was probably bigger than the TV that they were all sewn onto that. I also make installation pieces out of it. So like free hanging pieces of the paper. I use them for note cards for people. I really try to, they were kind of incorporated into all of my art practices in one way or another.
You couldn't do watercolor or something on this type of paper?
Probably not, but if you added sizing to it, you'd be fine. Yeah, if you added that base to it to really help keep it water resistant later on, you could totally use it as watercolor paper. And you can see like one of these, I've drawn on it with a pen. It takes pen pretty well. It will take acrylic fairly well since you're not using that much water. But it does it's stronger than you think it is, for sure, especially if you're using, one of the reasons I really like to incorporate Abaca into, like I talked about before with my linters, if you're gonna purchase any linter from Claridge House, I would go for Abaca. It just creates a really strong base, so I like to add this into even my like recycled paper bases to just help make sure that it's gonna have the fibers that it needs to hold itself the longest and with the most work done to it.
Thank you.
Of course. We'll do a little circle over here. Oh, whoever wants to go first, yeah.
I was thinking is there a way to make a bigger piece?
Yes, so I normally use a standard size piece of paper, or normally make standard size pieces of paper with this. All you have to do for the bigger piece is choose a bigger frame. One of the reasons why canvas frames are so great, because you can go to the store and buy like the specific ones you would want and really make it the specific size. The larger the frame though, the larger the vat you have to have, because you need enough room to be able to do the full dunk and lift up. Like this vat is too small for me to use the larger pieces of paper with. But yeah, you can do any size you want as long as you can hold it yourself, you know?
You might need a kiddie swimming pool.
Yeah, exactly. What was yours?
You might have answered my question, but does it take a fold well?
It does.
You did a letter?
Yeah, absolutely. I do a lot of folds with mine. Especially the thicker it is, the better it will take a fold as well. So, and all you have to do to mitigate the thickness is just how much pulp you have in the vat. So, more pulp, thicker piece of paper, kind of thing.
For fiber, have you ever added fur or hair?
I have not. Me and my friend had a going joke in our paper making class about making allergen paper, and we wanted to add a bunch of cat hair to it. Send to your enemies. But you could totally just, again, really anything you want.
Here, you know, they got rabbits and different critters.
Yeah, no, you could totally just, taking the fur and adding it to the vat, I'd say you definitely want some sort of paper base, but you could absolutely do that. And I'm sure with the way that the fur is, it would act as a great binder. Yeah, great fiber. Yes.
I'm curious, how are you gonna get rid of that water?
Oh, so I'm gonna go over that with you guys in a little bit.
Okay.
But we can go over that right now, actually. So, as you've seen, paper is a pretty water intensive process. I try to do a lot of things throughout the process to really help make sure that I'm not wasting any water and I'm reusing as much as possible. So the first thing I start with is when I am blending my paper. Once it comes out of the blender, I take this and my strainer, which is sitting somewhere.
Oh, it's under your
Oh,
bag.
perfect. And my little kitchen strainer. I'll put this over the bucket. I'll pour my little pulp concoction through this, and the water will go back into my water reserve essentially, and then I'm just put the pulp with as little water as possible into my pulp bucket. This is great because the more pulp you add to your vat, the more, if there's a lot of water in the pulp, it will dilute your vat. So all of a sudden you'll have a whole bunch of water and not a lot of pulp. So this really helps maintain the amount of water in your vat. And then I essentially do the same thing when it's time to get rid of the vat. So all I do is I'll take a bucket, scoop some water out. I'll have my little water reserve bucket that all of this has been dripping into. I take it, I strain everything through. So it's catching all those fibers, all the things that I've added into the paper. And then I just recycle the water in my yard, so I just throw it on some plants, because at that point I've taken everything out, and since I'm using just natural dyes and things like that, I'm not worried about any weird chemicals going into into the lawn or onto the plants. And then you can I just use the water to water things with, and it takes a little longer for cleanup versus just dumping something down the drain, but it also allows me to collect any extra pulp I have in here. I just squeeze as much water as I can out of that pulp and save it for the next time I make paper. Yeah, and it can kind of be like an infinite thing. And I save a lot of handmade paper scraps as well. So like, here's a bunch of cuttings I have from a project I did a while ago. This I'll eventually reconstitute into pulp and then add it back in so I can use it again to make more handmade paper. And yeah, so the cycle just continues. Yes.
What happens when you use newspaper for pulp? Is it too soft or?
No, you're gonna want, since the newspaper's so thin, you are gonna want probably more pulp, or you'll get less pieces than what you're essentially starting with. But it works great. It will be fairly gray though, so you do have to be prepared for a nice gray piece of paper at the end of the newsprint. But my recycled paper that I brought with me that I didn't use today, that has newsprint in it, so newspaper without the printing on it. So, yes.
Well, Adrian, you've got more time. So, is there another question?
Oh yeah, we can get through all the questions.
Okay.
We can do more, yeah.
What about cardboard?
Cardboard is great. Again, shred it before you put it in the blender. A paper shredder is a great way to get that process started. But it will make nice, since it's so thick, it will make nice thick pieces of paper. Yeah.
Well, if you're using these other sources like newspaper and cardboard, can you add bleach then to your pulp? And
I'm sure you can. I have not personally tried that, but I'm sure you can. I don't see why you wouldn't be able to, other than just like making sure you're adding an appropriate amount and not, hurting your hands at some point. Yeah.
have you ever put the paper after it's pressed over a mold or in a mold to create a dimensional paper?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That's something really cool that you can do with paper. I would suggest pulling a fairly thick sheet of paper if you're going to do this. So again, just making sure there's more pulp in your vat. But you can absolutely use these to lay over molds. Putting them over balloons is really fun to create like spheres, and then you just pop the balloons when you're dry. But as I showed you with this piece, how you can kind of smush the fibers together, you can, if you want to lay over like a large mold, just go in and at all the seams, smush them all together. But yeah, you can absolutely use them to lay over or into molds. And you can even take some of your, like if the pulp that you've pulled out of here, if you have like a little like ceramic mold, you could push it all, just stick it all in there and you'd be totally fine. It's really amazing the things you can do with paper. It's like in the pulp, it's very infinite. Yes?
After you've made your sheets of paper and dried them, do you have to do anything special when it comes to storing them? Like you're not using them immediately?
No, I mean the only thing that might happen is if some of the materials you're using to dye your paper with aren't light fast, over time that might fade if they're sitting out in the sunlight. I keep mine in a cardboard box that's just sitting out in the open in my studio. But it really is up to you. If you want to be really careful with them, store them like you would like a work of art that you want to keep working on. I don't want to say careless with mine, but I like, they're just sitting in a little box and they've been there for a while and they're totally fine.
Yeah. Can you re-wet them a little bit to mold them after they have been?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So you can totally, I wouldn't necessarily dunk them in a bucket of water, but you could spray them with like a little spray bottle to re-wet them and use them to mold that way. You can also, if I, for example, like stored something improperly and it got wrinkled, you can iron them and then they'll iron out flat, which I've done before. So like this piece, for example, is a very small piece of a very large installation that I did where all of these are kind of hanging in very reminiscent of like a Chinese dragon form from the ceiling, and they got in transport, they got very crushed, and all I had to do was iron them out, and it was totally like took an iron to them and they were fine. So yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about storing them. They're strong.
So you could even put wax paper over it and
Yes,
iron.
absolutely, yeah. And I just took the iron straight to the paper, and it was okay. Lower temperature setting, but you could use wax paper. Yeah, you can. They're very hardy. Yeah.
What materials do you use that you get the most vibrant colors from?
So to get super vibrant colors, I mean, turmeric is a wonderful one, and spirulina if we want to stick to more natural dyes. Again, though, those little crinkly packing pieces are a fantastic way to dye your paper, and you can you can get a lot more, really hone in the colors you want and get a lot more vibrant, less natural colors with these. So again, I would suggest buying a little bit higher quality. If you missed this earlier, I was saying that these just have the color printed on top of the paper. Oh my gosh! Versus being fully fully saturated, and the more fully saturated are, the better that color will translate at the end.
I'll be watching the whole video.
Yeah,
Very
perfect.
fascinating.
Yes.
What about like crepe paper?
Oh yeah, crepe paper, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, any paper that's been saturated with color already, like that's how it's been created, that's going to be great additive for manipulating the color with anything.
Have you tried any other natural dyes like indigo?
I haven't tried indigo, but one of my friends is a big indigo person, and she's had great luck with that. There's a whole book, and I wish I knew the name, but it goes through all the different ways you can dye paper with natural colors. I've known people to use pomegranate before. Blueberries, black beans, basically anything that you would be dyeing like natural, like fabric with. Again, pay attention to what you're using. Cotton will be red wine. Cotton will be much more receptive, and you probably want that to get that dye soaking in with your pulp for a day or two before you use it, so it can kind of bind with that. Yeah.
Have you tried safflower?
Oh yeah, beets. I've used beet powder before. So you can really, I'd say like anything. If you were really set on natural dyeing, let it sit in your, make a little bucket of pulp and put that natural dye in your pulp. Let it sit for a day or two, and then use it. So then it really has time to absorb into the paper.
In terms of, you say when you're drying and it's pretty tough and it's amazing what you can put it on. Have you ever tried to do a mask?
No, but that's a fantastic idea. I feel like similarly to the mold, it would probably be okay. Again, you want to start with that thicker paper so it has more room to kind of bend. But yeah, you could do it's. I'm always very pleasantly surprised by how hardy the paper is.
Interesting.
Does that look like the book?
Kind of like paper mache, everything.
Yeah, that looks really similar. That has to, or
Well, my methodology.
You guys, here's an example of the book.
It'll get rid of the wrinkles, right?
nice. Thank
I've had customers
Do we have any more questions?
What aren't you telling us?
I'm trying to think. I feel like, it's such an infinite thing. You can really, I'm trying to think of other cool things I've seen people do. I follow this one jewelry artist that makes wire armatures, like little tiny armature leaves, and then dips them in her paper pulp over and over again, and it will coat the little pieces in pulp, and then she seals that in resin. So that's really cool. There's really the pulp is really interesting because it does really just want to stick to you. If you'll notice that it normally it will, anything that's gridded, it will kind of leave a thin film of pulp on, but you can really use that to your advantage. And again, dipping things in pulp is a really fun way to do things. You can, like I said, lay the paper over things to create different shapes. I've taken the paper and put it directly onto a canvas, and so let it dry onto the canvas. I like to spray a little bit of spray glue on there to really make sure it stays, but that's another thing you can do. But yeah, you can, it's really cool that you can really like take it and run with it and incorporate it into anything that you're wanting to do with it. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. That's like fun.
Any
Yes.
more questions, guys? Can you erase, if you draw with pencil, can you erase on this kind of paper?
I'd say lightly. I actually did that last night. I was writing a letter to a friend and misspelled something, and it will disrupt the fibers very lightly. I wouldn't go over it a bunch, but you can get away with erasing a little bit. And adding that sizing, if you're really wanting to work heavily with it, adding a little sizing goes a long way with that.
Like fabric sizing.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Of course, thank you.
Spectacular.
And I have some like examples of things and different pieces. If anyone wants to rifle through this stack, please feel free to check it out.
There's things up here, and it looks like you put it on canvas.
Yeah, so that.
So you're welcome to come up.
I turned off your microphone. Do you need that?
Oh no, you're fine. Yeah, you're.
Okay. So let's take a break. Let's be back in 15 minutes. And do come up and check this out. Okay, I am on. Hi guys, we're back. I'm going to, where's Wendy?
Wendy's
Wendy's talking.
schmoozing.
We're going to bring Wendy up because she's going to go into so much more detail about what's on the tables. So come on up, Wendy.
Not so much detail, but. So we have received all of our brochures and our media. And as of the end of today, that will be all distributed to at least the host studios and some of the tour participants themselves. So everybody that is participating in the tour has received 100 each of the brochures and the postcards, and we're asking for that group of people, the 39 of them, and a couple extra volunteers that we've got, we're asking for those people to distribute throughout El Dorado County, and there is on the tour website a link where you can sign up for an area to distribute to. Or if you don't sign up, you can just distribute. But we're trying to make sure that it gets spread out around the county, which was why we tried this thing with the sign up. So what we have right now is probably, gosh, I don't know. This is a pack of 25. We probably got a couple thousand of the postcards and at least maybe 1,000 brochures. And today I'm asking anybody in the room who is willing to take some brochures and some postcards and deliver them in whatever manner you see possible. If you've got meetings that you go to, or you're around a school site and you want to take them over and ask them to put it in the teachers' boxes or the staff's boxes, or any other kind of large group, if you want to walk around the grocery store and hand them out to strangers, whatever that looks like. Part of the reason we've tried the sign-up tool is because that way people that are distributing materials can look to see where it's being distributed and try and get to another area. And there's areas that haven't been signed up for. If there's an area on the, thank you, that was awesome.
We really enjoyed it, thank you.
Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Everybody.
As far as
Nice
the,
meeting you.
she's so sweet. They should all be so perky. So on the.
She's younger.
Yeah, we're still perky though. So as far as the delineation of the area in which you would be distributing, there is no expectation that you're gonna go to anywhere in that area. There's no expectation, only the hope that within that area you find some places that they will make themselves to the public. So today, I'm asking this group if there is anybody here who's willing to take some brochures and some postcards and place them wherever you want to place them.
Sure.
Yay!
And even if it's just a couple to the receptionist in your dentist's office, that's really awesome. And Kathy, I'm gonna jump in here while we're on the tour real quick.
Okay.
And mention this. We're doing something really exciting this year on the tour. It has happened in the past, but it hasn't happened for a while. So one of the things you'll notice on the brochure is there's an announcement on the brochure and on the postcard for an art giveaway. So we're encouraging all of our members to go out and visit the various studios on the tour and be sure and sign up on the sign-in sheet at each studio for an opportunity to win a very nice work of art, art prints as well as originals. And you can see those listed on the PAAstudiotour.com website under the art giveaway page. And I think we have 16 now, Matt?
Something like that. That's
Does
a
that,
lot.
does that sound about right? So on the brochure, you'll see the little sign-in to give for art giveaway, and there's a little bit of information about it on the postcard as well. So that's very exciting. The more studios you visit, the more chance you have to win, although you were not going to win more than one art piece. So come on out.
Now you should not leave.
Oh, I'm up again? Well, I have to get different audio visual to come up again.
Okay, what are you gonna do with those? Wendy, are you still talking?
Yeah, and so the balance of these are gonna be at Gold Country Art Gallery. And so if anybody runs out, if you hear any studio tour members that say they've run out, then they can pick up more materials. We're letting them know by email. I think Linnell is probably gonna do some blasts to the general public to tell them. I also think a blast to the group, the studio tour group, that somewhere close to the tour, if they've got a lot of material that they have not distributed, they should probably take it to the gallery.
And we can communicate easily by email with the tour artists, but if we want to get it out to the general population, we should have Sue schedule a blast for it. And if we want to get it out to the greater population, of course, we can do that through Arts and Culture El Dorado, who has a mailing list of about 4,000 people as opposed to our 400 people.
Yeah, so the deal is, because I'll be gone here shortly, I want to make sure that we've got the materials in a place where people can get to them if they need to, and that we've sent out the communication to those that will need to know where it is. So thanks, everybody. We're delivering.
Oh, Matt?
Have a heck of a
Matt
tour.
has something he wants to say. Come
I'll
on
just
up.
add one more thing. We got a really good deal. I don't know if I need to be on here, but we found a printer that was able to provide for us more brochures at a lower cost than we've ever had before. We have 5,000 brochures. We have 5,000 postcards. We need to flood El Dorado County with these brochures. That will help get everyone aware. Your help is greatly appreciated.
Who is so generous?
Does anybody have a
Got print.
blue Ford out in the parking lot?
A what?
A car, bright blue,
Bright blue
I have a
Ford.
bright blue car.
way down that way?
No.
All right,
No,
because
mine's
the
right out.
door was open and there's a purse in it. I shut the door, I left the bag in it, so.
Oh,
no-
a purse. I thought you said a person. I'm like, are they dead?
Okay, it's bright blue, it's some kind
You're a
of
person
Ford,
too.
but I mean, it's blue.
Okay, all right. I'm not delusional here.
You close the door,
Let's hope it's ordered and not the car.
I'll let you just jump in. It's okay. Before we get started on the challenge, which I'll talk about as soon as I'm done with this, you found another flyer on your table for the barn sale trail along Highway 49. And this is when I open up my art barn once or twice a year on this tour. And the reason I loop in PAA on this, which I wouldn't normally do, but we accept donations of artwork and art supplies, and I take them into Art Barn and sell them to benefit our outreach fund. And last year we raised over $1,000 for our outreach fund. We gave a grant, as you all will know, to the Otter School up in Volcanoville this year to help them replace their art supplies for their drama department and such. And we will do that again next year. But one of the things that we've just received is a 21 box donation from an artist that I believe was from Pennsylvania that migrated out here, and her daughter gifted us with this 21 boxes of art and art supplies. And the art is mostly in the style of Americana, anything that's painted. And then there is some paint and some blanks for tool art. And am I saying that right?
Toll painting. Toll painting.
Toll painting, okay. And so if any of you are interested in any of those wooden type blanks, there's little animals, there's frames, there's shelves, there's toilet paper holders, there's Kleenex box holders, there's napkin holders. We've got holders and all kinds of holders. There's benches, chairs, some handmade wooden waterfowl that can be painted or beaded or whatever else you like to do. Come out to Art Barn and take a look at that stuff, because anything you buy, 100% of those proceeds go to the outreach fund. And obviously it's extremely well priced. It's pretty much whatever you're willing to pay for it. And so we're going to move on to, oh, and you can scan this QR code right here to get my address. It's also in your membership booklet. So it's not really a secret, although it is hard to find.
Come on.
And there, yeah, and there will be signs from Pleasant Valley Road, because it is hard to find my place. So come on out and see Art Barn. So I'm number one on the challenge for this week, and the challenge was suggested by Jerry Litwin, our treasurer, who also arranges our challenges for us. And she said the prompt was a few of your favorite things, and think of Sound of Music, right? I knew it wasn't just Mary Poppins. Right. Sound of Music. And so I, of course, looked that up to see what those things were. And it's
Raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens. Sorry.
bright copper kettles and warm woolen mittens.
Brown paper packages.
Brown paper packages tied up with string. And so, as you all know,
In front of the camera.
I've been doing some AI work recently. And I asked AI for a prompt that included those things. And so this is what I ended up with. And I love this one. I've called it Mr. Innocent, because obviously that box has been truly, truly crushed. And I'm pretty sure he's responsible. And so who's next? Carolyn?
There's only three of us, and Jerry, you came up with the challenge, and you didn't make something for the challenge. You're so mean, it's so bad.
Okay, thank you, Linnell.
You're welcome.
And our next up is Carolyn. It's just plain old Carolyn.
I'm in charge of telling you about three things besides my share, but Fall Member Show is coming up. October 7th is taken. It's subject matter based. You can find all the information by going to the website. And clicking on the link, and you can see the entry form and the entry rules. Please, if you can enter, print out an entry form so that
Not just print it out, fill it out before you get there.
Yeah, but that way we don't have to print a whole bunch for when you get there. If you have questions, you can always email me. I'm sure my email address is all over the thing somewhere. Also, if you know what you plan on entering and you would like the possibility of having an image of yours in the Mountain Democrat, you can email a JPEG image, not embedded in the email. Sylvia's very adamant about this, to Sylvia Coleman at GoGitter, Gitter, at AOL.com, not Yahoo, AOL.com. There's an inside joke there. By September 15th. So yeah, you have to know what you're going to want to enter, but I sent her an image, and I know she's gotten one other. She wants your name, the title of the piece, and the media. And she writes the article and submits it to the Mountain Democrat, and they choose which images they want to print and put in their publication. Okay, so if you have questions about the fall show, you can talk to me. Motherlode, there are some postcards on the tables, please take one, please take a few and hand them out to anybody you know who might be interested in entering or even just visiting. And Sue has been working like crazy, getting names of people, entities, thousands. How many thousand people? Have we? 3,000 people that we've contacted via their websites and their email. Artists all over, mostly Bay Area, but California and even nationally, to get entries. So if you're interested in entering, go on and take a look at it. It's through Cafe. The deadline to enter is September 18th. We have just over 100 entries so far. We would like to, last year we had about 400, and we would love to hit 500 entries this year. Sylvia?
I think it's September 8th.
Oh,
Because
your
I have to
deadline?
write it and then I have to get it.
Okay, now Sylvia's changed. I couldn't remember what date she told me. The sooner the better.
18th.
No, that's for Motherlode. Sylvia's telling me she wants your images for the fall member show by the 8th of September. So,
Which is the last day Art Barn will be open.
see, it's all tied together. All right. Last thing is the Senior Center would like some of our Placerville Arts Association members to display some of their artwork in the hallway here. It's pretty bare right now. We've done this before. I had a gentleman bring 8 large pieces this morning, and no, he left 3 of them, and I doubt that we're gonna be able to hang all 3 of them, but you can bring a piece of your art, or 2 if they're small, or relatively small, and bring them with your name, phone number or email, or both, on the back, a title and the media, if you care to. We do not display prices, but if someone is interested in your piece of art, then we can contact you. Bring them here and you give them to Rebecca. If Rebecca's not available, Michaela will take your art, and by the 30th of August, we need them in, and then the first Tuesday in September, we'll hang them, whatever we have room for. Hopefully, everybody will get 1 piece hung. No, Mr. N will not get all 8 of his pieces hung. I guess he thought it was his show, but anyway.
You can
Yes.
write the price on the back. It's just
You
not gonna be
probably-
shown on the
right.
front. That way, if somebody has a
Rebecca-
question.
Right, Rebecca will create tags from the information you give her. And there's limited space, but we have the nice rail system in the hangers, so it's pretty easy to hang them. Bring for Rebecca by August 30th, put your name, I told you how many, and any questions?
Yeah, you said that she had said something about leaving them up until December.
Okay.
And then what's the next
We
call?
have the wall through December with the walls, but she was, and you can always come and change out your piece if you have one hanging. And then she was looking, and she's still in a meeting. I wanted to talk to her, but she's been in a meeting all afternoon. She was talking about, she kind of wanted to maybe change the mood for December to more, I forget what kind of color, nice deep rich colors, maybe not spring colors, maybe.
Jewel tones, we thought maybe.
Jewel tones probably. If you want to just start out with that would be great. But whatever we have, they're thrilled to have work on the walls. No, we've never sold anything out of here, but you know what? You never know. Mostly.
I
they
did
just
have somebody call me once and ask.
Yes, they called Matt and asked too, and when he told them how much it was, they went, oh yeah, okay, never mind. But they love having the stuff on their walls, and they just took quilts down, and now we have this up. Wasn't your blue car? Okay, all right, any questions? All right, I have a piece, I went home, I'm one of those people, give me an assignment, and I'm doing it right now, so, it's an oil. Okay. So, some of my favorite things, let's see, let's go.
I don't
around.
see a kitten.
Wine. I like wine. Flowers, both growing them and arranging them. Oh, look, there's a glass. Wine again. Books, I like to read a lot. The painting, the kitty paw prints. I didn't want to paint a cat. I don't paint animals, but the paw prints, because I love cats. And then the oil painting tubes. And then the apple, because I was a teacher for 30 years and I really loved it. But I love not being a teacher too, so there you go. Okay, all right.
I've got 2 more quick things before you start. Because she just walked in the room, I want to sincerely thank Debbie, who has now disappeared into the crowd back there. There she is in the very back room, for her help with putting together this brochure this year. Matt Harling also and other committee members worked really hard on it, but Debbie stepped up and did this, and it was awesome. We're all loving it very, very much. The comments today were, love the white instead of the black, the size of the images, so thank you very, very much, Debbie.
Good job, Debbie.
And then the other thing I wanted to mention, and this has come up a couple of times in the last month, somebody's going to our Placerville Arts Association website and the PAA Studio Tour website and grabbing our email addresses. And a couple of people have reported receiving emails from somebody who is spoofing me and asking that person to send a gift card because I can't go buy it right now. And I also had it happen with Roy Lazama asking me to send his niece a gift card because his Amazon account wasn't working. Now, trust me, that's something Roy Lazama would never, ever do. So be heads up, we're not asking anybody to send gift cards, and if anybody gets that kind of email from anybody else within PAA, somebody's really scoping out our websites and grabbing our email addresses. Because Sylvia Coleman's gotten one, Carolyn's gotten one, and some of you others may have had them in your spam filter. I think I'm done.
Well, boy, that's a big thing to be done with. Shoot, I don't like that. Anyway, one thing about the member show, ta-da, yours truly is in charge of pedestals, and we have 9 of them. However, 5 of them are already taken. So we've got 4 left. And Lori, is Lori still here? Okay, there's Lori. Lori approached me today. So if anybody needs a pedestal because you have 3D art, not the 2D, let me know, okay? Okay, good for that. I have some notes, hold on. Oh, I'm excited. The Christmas brunch, I'm in charge of that, and I have booked Sportsman's Hall Bar in,
Pollock Pines.
it's in Camino, Pollock Pines. It's in Pollock Pines. And I booked it for December 6th. It's a Friday at 10:30. But I know it's early. Shoot, how are we thinking of snow now? No, we aren't. So the information will be coming out, when it's more appropriate. But I'm excited. Has anybody been to the Sportsman Bar? Yeah? I mean, it is as close to our log cabin that we used to go to, as close as we can get. And Amy, who owns both the Diamond Springs Hotel and the Sportsman's Hall, she's delightful. Delightful to work with. So I hope you guys are excited about it. Kind of shaking it up a bit, Yeah, okay, good.
You'll need to reserve your seat, but you don't have to pay in advance.
Yeah, we order from a limited menu, but all that's going to be on the information for the website. So I hope you guys can come. That'd be fun. And I wanted to tell you the next meeting is, we're going to have Cheryl Gleason, who is also the art curator for the MAC. And she's going to be here in September. And I'm excited because she's going to talk about how she judges and what she looks for in art. And she's also going to critique. Right now she's going to critique 5 pieces. So I encourage everybody to bring a piece of art, and we will have a drawing, and we'll draw 5 names, okay? Because we're not going to be able to get to everybody. But you know what I'm hoping for? I'm hoping that maybe we'll have extra time, and we could do more than 5, but we'll see, okay? But that's the plan. So I think that's cool. I like that. And just the last bit is outreach. We have a committee, and we're moving forward for 2024. And a couple of outfits that we're looking at is Bill Robinson's very own Images of Hope, as well as More Rehab Center. And both are outstanding organizations and can sure use our donations. So if you guys think of anybody else that you would like us to look at, don't hold back, okay? Share with us. And we are a little early. Does anybody have anything they want to say? Oh, okay.
Whoever baked the home-baked treats back there, they were amazing.
That is good. And you know, Deborah is in charge of, not that you baked it.
Some of it, but not all.
Oh, some of it. Deborah's in charge of this, as well as the Motherlode Show reception. She's not in charge of it. She's gonna oversee it. So Deborah does a bang-up job.
I would like to say that nobody has ever let me down. They do so well in this particular group.
It is amazing the way that artists deliver their art when they say they're going to. I'm always stunned by that.
Yeah.
And then secondly, when they say they're going to do something like bring cookies, they do it.
And I have yet, no one has, they've always done more than I expected and nicer than I expected. I'm always happy. It's not a job, it's just, I get to ride along.
Oh, well, we're a good group, right?
That's
You guys,
right.
yeah, we're tight. We are tight. And we have a lot of fun. We do. We have a lot of fun doing what we do. So anything else? That was good. No. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.